In the mid-1990s, the story of cannibal Alexander Maslik, who killed several people during his criminal career, shook the Altai region of Russia. For his atrocities, the cannibal was included in the Criminal Encyclopedia of Russia. We will now share with you the details of this old, still terrifying story, how Alexander Maslik became a brutal cannibal at the young age of 23. But this isn't the only story we'll talk about. And believe me, the second half of the video will terrify you even more. Because in it, we'll tell you about a gruesome discovery made in a house's basement. Police found more than 20 liters of canned human flesh in the home of a madman. But first things first, let's start with a story that shook the entire Altai region. Little is known about Maslik's criminal life, but one fact is enough to understand how an average boy from Aleisk became one of Russia's most dangerous criminals. Alexander Valeryevich Maslik was born in 1971 in Aleisk, Altai. Alexander spent his childhood and adolescence in a socially difficult environment. Both parents were chronic alcoholics. According to Maslik, his father even suffered from an addiction to illegal substances. Therefore, according to Alexander, he was born with a diseased mind. As a child, Maslik was prone to hooliganism and vagrancy, ran away from home after being physically abused by his parents, and was a poor student. He was registered with the Juvenile Detention Center and was arrested several times. At the age of 12, due to his bad behavior and his parents' alcoholism, he was placed in a boarding school for difficult-to-educate youths. The boy was practically an orphan, although his parents were still alive. At the boarding school, he was physically and mentally abused by older classmates. After boarding school, he led a criminal and antisocial life, stealing cars and committing robberies. Tall and thin on the outside, withdrawn and secretive on the inside, Alexander could not defend himself against anyone. Years later, during the trial, the jurors would weep when they learned about the cannibal's childhood. Upon his release from boarding school into adulthood, Maslik decided to fight evil with his own hands and in a radical way, namely, by taking the lives of all those who had abused minors. In conversations with investigators, Alexander matter-of-factly described himself as a forest orderly. His criminal career, however, began with simple car thefts and robberies, and in one of them he killed a person. This is how he was first sent to a maximum security prison in a village in Barnaul. The future cannibal's relationships with his cellmates were just as complicated as they had been with his brothers at the boarding school during his childhood. Therefore, his next act was in line with Maslik's ideology, punishing criminals. In 1991, he strangled his cellmate. For this, he received 12 years in prison and the status of a repeat offender. After the incident, even the most dangerous inmates were afraid to be in a cell with him, and, as it turned out, not without reason. His sentence grew longer and longer, eventually reaching life imprisonment, as each new crime behind bars surpassed the previous one in sophistication and cruelty. After that, the criminal was transferred to Pretrial Detention Center No. 1 in Barnaul. Even then, he had hatched an elaborate plan, which he consistently pursued. He wanted to be sent to the Serbsky Center for Social and Forensic Psychiatry in Moscow. The worst of the worst were sent there for assessment and determination of sanity, which was mandatory if sentenced to life imprisonment or death. In the 1990s, this facility was considered a health resort for prisoners. The journey to the capital and the examination took a few months, during which the prisoners could recover from everyday prison life. The result was that they were often declared insane and referred to a psychiatric hospital. In addition, many offenders were convinced that escaping from there was much easier than from the prison in Barnaul. Alexander shared a cell with an offender who committed violence against an underage girl. Their relationship was not good. One night, Maslik's new neighbor boasted about his criminal exploits and did not hold back his emotions. He talked about how much he liked 10-year-old girls. He even accused Alexander of abusing his own people when he could only touch strangers. Maslik then hit his talkative cellmate several times in the face and chest. After some time, another heated argument broke out. Finally, Alexander put a rope around his cellmate's neck and strangled him until he suffocated. Maslik laid the body on the bed. After some time, the idea of turning himself in to the law enforcement authorities as a cannibal occurred to him, although he himself claimed to have tasted human flesh before his arrest. The criminal believed that if the guards saw him eating his cellmate, he would be sent to the coveted psychiatric sanatorium much more quickly. He used a shiv made from an ordinary ballpoint pen, which was permitted in his cell, as his weapon. Alexander smashed it sharply on the ground, then stabbed his victim and began eating the victim's organs, which he had boiled in the sink. However, no one saw him eating his victim, or they chose to overlook it. There is no specific article for cannibalism in Russian legislation. After this bloody incident, Maslik was transferred to a penal isolation facility in Rubtsovsk in 1994 as a particularly dangerous offender who violated the conditions of detention. Law enforcement authorities feared that mass unrest among the prisoners might otherwise break out. Sergei Voronin, a criminologist, reported, "That year, I was sent to Rubtsovsk as an assistant prosecutor to investigate another case. I learned about the blatant murder literally the next day and decided to visit the criminal. Strangely, he made a sympathetic impression. He spoke clearly and distinctly. His behavior was appropriate and even polite. As the detention center staff reported, there were no aggressive remarks on his part. His appearance was also pleasant, tall, almost 119 meters, slim. His motivation was immediately clear. There was no doubt about it. He wanted to be declared insane and had invented an entire legend for this purpose. Eduard Bauer, an investigator on this case in the 1990s and now a lawyer, also said, "In my opinion, Maslik was an ordinary criminal with a grudge against people. He wanted to avoid punishment with the help of a forensic examination. During the meeting, he behaved normally and did not seem intimidating." However, dealing with such people, of course, requires precautions, such as the obligatory presence of a prison officer and a service dog. By the time of the final act, the invention had taken on the character of a carefully thought-out script. The act itself became the most spectacular spectacle the cannibal had ever performed. In the Rubtsovsk Penal Solitary Detention Center 7, he had made contact with his fellow inmates. They were equally hardened habitual criminals. All three were almost the same age. Alexander Maslik, then 23, had already been convicted 4 times and was the only one of this group to be convicted of murder. The other inmate, Alexei Galasov, was 25 but had 1 less conviction, 3 times for robbery and theft. The third, Alexei Juba, who ultimately became the victim, was the same age as Maslik but younger in terms of the number of crimes. He had been convicted twice for robbery, theft, and car theft. All three dreamed of getting to this very Moscow center. Juba was the leader he wanted, if not the Moscow health resort. Then at least another cellmate, a move to another city, to see the world. Only murder could bring him that. It wasn't difficult to persuade the neighbors. Galasov was calm and agreed with the leader. Maslik already had experience in such matters. The trio decided to eliminate the 4th person as soon as he joined them. Cass was a problem mark. The newcomer, however, proved tough, and the beatings ceased. The morning after the fight, he was transferred to another cell. Then the enterprising Juba came up with a plan B. He suggested they try human flesh, after which the cannibals would be immediately sent to Moscow. The quiet Galasov immediately agreed, and Maslik readily seized the initiative and began a production designed to make his plan believable. He told everyone how, as a child, he had supposedly closed a cafe that sold pies with human flesh, and how much he wanted to try them. In his cell, he made a poster on a cardboard box, "I want to eat someone." Later, this inscription would be added to their files, and Maslik would have to serve his sentence alone so as not to have to wait for the next newcomer. Alexander decided to eliminate his comrade Juba. The night before, he painted on cardboard again, this time depicting a dismembered human being. The criminal waited for the guard to fall asleep at night and set to work. Maslik placed a noose around Juba's neck, and the obedient Galasov grabbed him by the legs. The body was dissected with a razor. All the entrails were removed, and a small amount of blood was drunk. The organs were boiled in the toilet using lit cotton wool. Galasov refused to eat, while Maslik tasted only a piece of liver, although he only put it in his mouth without swallowing it. An examination later confirmed this. Teeth marks were found on the piece of liver. Prosecutors and investigators believe that the barred window in the cell made it difficult for the inspectors to smell anything. The windows had no panes, allowing the summer night breeze to temporarily conceal the crime. In the morning, the men themselves confessed to their crime. "We really ate Juba." In court, they immediately pleaded guilty and were finally taken to the long-awaited facility in the capital. There, doctors determined that Maslik and Galasov had faked cannibalism and declared both sane. During the investigation, Alexander committed another murder. He killed another inmate who refused to repay his card debt. In 1996, Galasov was sentenced to 15 years in prison and Maslik was sentenced to death. However, he benefited from a moratorium. The death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment in Russia's most stringent prison, the Black Dolphin in the Orenburg region. In 2015, Alexander Maslik died. The exact circumstances of his death remain unknown. In 2005, a special report titled "Open Confession: Cannibals" was published, in which Alexander Maslik was one of the main characters, along with Vladimir Nikolaev and Mikhail Malyshev. In the interview, the cannibal tried to shift the blame onto the prisoner he had killed, Juba, and complained about his health. In 2008, Maslik gave a new interview on the program, Sentenced to Life Imprisonment, in which he again complained about the prison conditions and the deterioration of his health. Now we go to Nova Kakhovka, where the mothers, husbands, and children of the women who became the killer's canned goods were to meet in the courtroom. This story resembles a horror film more than reality. Investigators made a horrific discovery. In the basement, officers found more than 23-liter jars containing the flesh of 9 women. The case of the Nova Kakhovka monster has one very mysterious circumstance. No one even attempted to search for its victims. Why? The beautiful town of Nova Kakhovka in the Kherson region is known among other towns for its tranquility. Murders are rare here, but Kakhovka's reputation was ruined by a resident of Pionierskaya Street, Aridit. The arrest took place in January. To this day, curious onlookers show up in the area, wanting to see the windows of the apartment where the cannibal lived. The arrested man did not deny that he made preserves from his victims and ate them with relish. Forensic experts proved that the madman was sane at the time of the crimes and committed his actions with full awareness. The perpetrator's name is Vladimir Dovzhy. He did not follow in the footsteps of his parents, who were both doctors, but became a simple factory worker. He married but divorced. In 2003, he found a job as a security guard at a cemetery. His neighbors on Pionierskaya Street spoke positively of him, polite, friendly. Leads a healthy lifestyle, drinks in moderation. Overall, a wonderful person. It's just a pity that he brings women with dubious behavior into his home. But perhaps this is all due to the divorce. Vladimir himself said that it was easier with women with an easy life than with other women. They make no demands, do not criticize, and do not judge. Once he stabbed a sex worker. Then he came to the conclusion that these lost women meant nothing to anyone. No one was looking for them. He had previously tasted dog meat, but now he was curious to taste human flesh. After killing his first victim, Vladimir could no longer satisfy his appetite. The cannibal did not act alone, but was assisted by his partner. The victims were lured into the apartment, where a feast was prepared, which ended with the deaths of the guests. How did the murders proceed? First, the victim was brought to the kitchen. They were placed with their back to the door. Then a drinking binge began, during which Dovji went to his room to get a knife. He crept up behind his victim so as not to see her eyes, as he didn't want to make eye contact with the woman awaiting death. From the detainee's statement, the boiled meat came off the skin easily. The fat was very tasty. I cut it into small pieces. I boiled the head so it wouldn't appear in the river later, and so, one by one, the women disappeared. All of them lived lives on the fringes of society, so no one was looking for them. The first, then the second, and so the number reached 10. The cannibal not only ate his victims, he even canned them. The cannibal's feast could have continued like this if not for one coincidence. Irina was Vladimir's last visitor. She could have been the 11th victim, another can of food. She fit the bill of a cannibal's victim in every way. She took illegal substances and sold herself for money. This meant that no one would have mourned the missing woman. After raising woman on that terrible evening, the 42-year-old monster stabbed Irina and her drinking buddy. He had previously boasted that he had killed their missing colleague, whom Irina knew. Vladimir carried the man's body to the bathroom and began to dismember it. He threw the pieces of meat into a pot, removed the entrails, and began to eat the skull, offering some to his visitor. He placed the bones in front of the living room door. He intended to dispose of them in the middle of the night. He threw the head into the river and buried the rest near the garage. Irina didn't wait for Vladimir's return. While he hid the remains, the woman hid with acquaintances and recalled what had happened with horror. The next day, she went to the police. Vladimir was arrested. During a search of the killer's apartment, numerous canned goods were found. Cans of canned meat filled the entire pantry. The homeowner kept about 22 cans of preserved human flesh. It is noteworthy that the detainee could well remember who was preserved where. This is Luba, and here is Valia. According to him, 3 cans of canned meat made up one person. He had killed 9 people and was able to eat 8 cans, a 4-sided stockpiler. It was difficult to charge Vladimir Dovya in all cases. The remains of the women thrown into the river could not be found. What's more, no one searched for the missing people, and no reports were filed with the police. The most important evidence, the preserves, could not be used either. The experts did not have expensive equipment available that could identify processed human tissue. Vladimir confessed that, in addition to people, he had also preserved dogs that he had caught on the street. Although he confessed to 10 murders, the maximum he faced was life imprisonment. A criminal investigator met with the recently arrested serial killer at the time. Vladimir Dovji is a unique case. Behind his actions lay severe psychological trauma. He loved his mother very much and suffered terribly from her death. He was extremely pedantic. You could have set your watch by him. He played a lot of sports and was nicknamed Athlete in the yard. He was a tall, strong man, but he was afraid of women and had no experience with them. As a result, he had a lot of complexes. His friend often made fun of him, offering to find him a woman with loose morals, and he did so. But Volodya was ashamed and couldn't do anything. So his friend satisfied the woman himself, saying, "Look how it's done." Instead of sexual experience, Volodya developed a hatred for such women. During one of these visits, when his friend brought a woman with him, Vladimir made short work of his friend. He ordered the woman to remain silent, otherwise you'll become an accomplice. He dismembered the body in the bathroom and dumped the parts in an inlet near a ship graveyard. This happened in Nova Kakhovka. In Biensat. The woman stayed with him. However, he was terribly jealous and eventually killed her too. He later said, "When I killed my girlfriend, it was disgusting. But killing the woman pleased me. I enjoyed it." He put the body parts in the refrigerator and made them into meatballs. "I enjoyed all of that." Valadia began inviting other women over. He killed them and made them into meatballs. Eventually, investigators found him and arrested him. Dovye confessed to 36 murders, but only the bones of 9 women were found in the harbor basin. On the 3rd day after his arrest, in the fall of 2004, the murderer died unexpectedly. He died of a severe stroke. When asked by journalists, "Because of your experiences, are you afraid of prison?" he replied, "No, I'm not afraid. But I've realized what I've done." Vladimir himself fully admitted his guilt and was already awaiting his sentence, but died of a stroke in his cell at the age of 43. It's remarkable that he never had any problems before. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves.